Hello, this is my lesson on the active and passive voice, and I hope you all enjoy this lesson. So let's go ahead and get started. So, why is the passive voice important? Well, first, let me explain that most of our sentence structures are spoken with the active voice, and this is done unintentionally. However, if you ever want to focus less on the actual subject and make the object the center of attention, passive voice is the structure you need. So when I say that the active voice is spoken unintentionally, I mean that we use that structure a lot more versus the passive voice structure. So I presented this chart in order to help you guys better see some examples of what I mean. So let's start with the simplest form, which is the present simple. The active voice reads, "They discuss the book." The passive voice reads, "The book is discussed by them." So as we can see here, they, who's the subject, is the center of the sentence. It's bumped to the front, and it's the focus. But in the passive voice, the focus is the object and the action that is done in the sentence. And right here, we have our prepositional phrase at the end. The reason why we have this at the end is because it is optional, and you don't need to put it if you don't want to put it. Most students tell me that it is a little bit more complicated once they put the prepositional phrase to the back of the sentence, so they stick to not putting it. And I also want to go over the negative components to using the passive voice, and one of those could be vagueness and the confusion of prepositional phrases. As you could see here, some of my fellow ELLs might think, should I add the prepositional phrase or should I not add it? And that question can get a little bit complicated and make it harder to write in the passive voice structure. So that is why I always recommend using the active voice. But I did have a couple of professors tell me in college that sometimes people use the passive voice in order to write in a certain style or make the action more known in the story that they are telling and focus less on the subject. So in that case, maybe passive voice does come into handy and you could use it. But in order to avoid vagueness and the confusion of using prepositional phrases, let's stick to not adding the prepositional phrase at the end. So that my next slide explains why we want to use the active voice versus the passive voice. So the difference between active and passive voice is that active voice focuses more on the subject of the sentence, as I said in my previous slide. And here in the diagram, we could see that active voice focuses on what the subject does, and the passive voice focuses on the action. And you could clearly see this in our chart here. Oops. Our chart here has all of the action in the passive voice pushed to the front of the sentence. And then we have our subjects here in the front. So you could clearly see the differences here. And then here are two more examples. And so another reason why I always highly suggest using the active voice versus the passive voice is because the active voice uses fewer words. If you notice in the passive voice, we always kind of add on words, or we have to add in a modal verb into the middle of our sentence, as opposed to using active voice where we don't really need to do that. And another great thing about using the active voice is that it makes your writing sound more captivating, and it also helps prevent a lot of grammatical mistakes. And one of them being the usage of the prepositional phrases. Some of my fellow ELLs may not know how to use a prepositional phrase, so maybe writing in the active voice would be more preferable. And overall, as I said, the active voice is just a much cleaner structure to use. And you don't have to worry about making as many mistakes as you would when you use passive voice. So here I included in my next slide examples of passive voice structures, so you could see why I prefer an active voice structure. So here, number 1, the lady cooked us a very nice and nutritious breakfast this morning. I changed it to a very nice and nutritious breakfast was cooked for us this morning. As you could see here, the prepositional phrase at the end was added, and the action was bumped to the front of the sentence. The second sentence, my teacher makes us recite Hamlet at the end of each class. We are to recite Hamlet at the end of each class. In this case, my subject completely disappeared, and the action was again moved on to the front of the sentence. Number 3, the manager sent out an email to all employees yesterday. And an email was sent out to all employees yesterday. And again, you can add in that optional prepositional phrase at the end. So let's see if I were to do that by the manager. You could see here that it adds on more words. So an email was sent out to all employees yesterday by the manager. But again, you have that option, so we'll go ahead and delete that. And then the last one, the company conducted a widespread survey regarding the dress code. A survey regarding dress code was conducted. And you could say, again, that optional by the company. And as you could see, it does add on a lot more words to the sentence. And now you could see why I prefer the active voice. Okay. Now I'm going to share with you a very helpful video that shows some different tenses. We'll only watch about a minute or 2 of the video, just so you can get an idea of how active voice and passive voice is written in different tenses.
I do my homework. My homework is done. Present continuous. I'm doing my homework. My homework is being done. Past simple. I did my homework. My homework was done. Past continuous. I was doing my homework. My homework was being done.
Okay, so here in the video you could see that the man in the video was explaining the different choices and how you write from active voice to passive voice in different tenses. And it starts getting complicated as you move through the video. But for time's sake, I only did about a minute of the video in order to just show the importance of both structures. So this is why I'm sticking to the more simple present and simple past, because as you move down the tenses, they do get a little complicated and a little harder to write. But now we are going to do student practice. So I had a couple of students volunteer to convert these sentences into the passive voice. So let's see what student A did. My little brother baked cookies. The cookies were baked by my little brother. Good job. So as you could see, that optional prepositional phrase was added to the end and the action was pushed to the front of the sentence. The Yankees won the World Series. The World Series was won by the Yankees. Again, that end optional prepositional phrase, the action bumped up to the front. Student C, the teachers decided to end classes early today. Our classes were ended early today. So as you could see, our subject is completely gone from our passive voice structure, which is okay. It makes our sentence a little more easier. And then the last one, the police blocked the street in downtown today. And that would be the street in downtown was blocked by the police. We added that end prepositional phrase. So good job. Student practice looks good. And now that we are ending our lesson, I'll go ahead and do our concluding class by adding in a quick pop quiz. Number 1, I ate a piece of chocolate. Student A chose active voice. The librarian read the book to the students. Student B chose active voice. The money was stolen. Student C chose passive. They are paid on Fridays. Student D chose passive. The movie is being made in Hollywood. Again, student E chose passive. I washed my car 3 weeks ago. That would be active. His hair was cut by a professional. That would be passive. The last one, I will introduce you to my boss this week. And that would be active. So now that our students got all of my pop quiz questions correct, I'll go ahead and end the lesson. And I hope you all enjoyed my lesson on the active and passive voice. Bye!